Hey there, friends. Come on in, settle down, and let's talk about something that's been sitting heavy on my heart. This is the story of Brett and Sarah, two dreamers, adventurers, and sailors who dared to carve their own path. They poured themselves into a sailboat named Theos and set out to cross the Atlantic together, but they never made it. And to this day, we still don't know exactly what went wrong. Now, I've heard a lot of sea stories in my time. Some are thrilling, some are funny, some are downright ridiculous, but this one's mysterious, tragic, and maybe most haunting of all, unfinished. Let me tell you about the Green Odyssey of Brett and Sarah, and how it ended in one of the most chilling modern sailing mysteries I've ever come across. Brett was the kind of sailor you'd meet in a marina and instantly like. Humble, hands-on, and full of that calm confidence that only comes from a lifetime on the water. He'd worked as a ferry mechanic, swam in the sea as a kid, and lived for the feel of wind on canvas. In 2015, Brett flew to the UK, not for an adventure, but for something even braver. He was donating a kidney to his sister. That tells you everything you need to know about his character. While waiting for a bus, he struck up a conversation with a woman 10 years his junior, Sarah. She had that same adventurous streak. They bonded quickly, chatted over tea, and went for a walk on the beach. Brett told her about his sailboat back home in Canada, Theos, and the dream he had of sailing around the world. Sarah was hooked. A few months later, she flew across the ocean to see Theos for herself. She stepped aboard a 42-foot gypsy ketch, classic lines, a bit rough around the edges, and absolutely full of potential. Brett took her on her first real sailing trip, and just like that, she was all in. They fell in love at sea, got married on board, and even held a second ceremony at Stonehenge. Their life together wasn't just a love story. It was a full-blown partnership in one of the boldest DIY sailing projects out there. Their plan was simple and epic: sail around the world. But they wanted to do it differently, sustainably. Instead of sticking with the tried-and-true diesel, they ripped it out and installed an electric drive system, powered by a battery pack from a Nissan Leaf. They called their journey the Green Odyssey. Now, if you've ever dealt with electric drive on a sailboat, you know it's no small task. It's clean and quiet, sure, but it also comes with serious limitations, mainly battery range and charging capacity. But Brett and Sarah didn't back down from a challenge. They installed 6 solar panels, rewired the boat, and made every inch of Theos serve a purpose. They started documenting everything on YouTube and Facebook: modifications, upgrades, sailing days, the ups and the downs. And people started following along. Their videos weren't flashy, but they were real, honest. A couple genuinely chasing their dream. Instead of just crossing the Atlantic from the east coast of North America, they decided to sail the long way. From British Columbia, down the Pacific, through the Panama Canal, and then all the way up the east coast to Halifax. That's a massive journey just to get to the start line of their Atlantic crossing. They spent time in San Francisco, soaked in the Mexican coastline, and eventually made it through the canal. Everywhere they went, they learned, adapted, and grew stronger as a team. They lived and breathed Theos. Every screw, every solar panel, every rigging tweak, they did it themselves. And when they finally arrived on the east coast, the plan was simple: sail to the Azores, rest up, then hop to Portugal, and from there, hike the Camino Trail. They prepped like pros, stocked up on supplies, filed a float plan, mounted a spot tracker so friends and family could follow their progress online. Everything was in place. On June 11th, 2023, they set sail from Halifax. Clear weather, light winds, and good spirits. A final video showed Brett calmly explaining their course, heading southeast, with Portugal in their sights. It was the last time anyone would hear from them. June 11th, 2023. Brett and Sarah slipped the lines in Halifax and pointed Theos toward the vast Atlantic. Spirits were high. They filmed a short video update not far from shore, about 16 miles out. In the clip, Brett sounded calm, focused. The wind was fair, and they were averaging 5.5 knots. He talked about aiming for the Azores with a steady east-southeast course and even mentioned spotting a freighter behind them leaving Halifax. That clip? It was the last anyone would ever hear from them. On June 13th, just 2 days into the crossing, their spot tracker, a device that pings their location via satellite for friends and family to follow, suddenly stopped transmitting. Just like that. One moment, you could see their position on a map, and the next, silence. Now, in the sailing world, a dropped signal isn't automatically a red flag. Offshore electronics are finicky. Batteries can die, antennas can fail, Or maybe they were just out of coverage. Everyone hoped for the best. Maybe they'd check in from the Azores soon. But day after day went by. No updates, no messages, no new videos. Sarah was active online throughout the trip. They both were, and now total digital silence. Family and friends started reaching out through every channel they could think of. No answer. The wait stretched on. 5 days, 10 days, then 15. Still nothing. No AIS data showing Theos passing ships. No radio calls, no sightings. And still, no official search was launched. The float plan they filed projected arrival in the Azores on July 2nd. That was the marker everyone was waiting for. When that date came and went with no sign of Theos, it finally triggered alarm bells. Authorities were notified. The Joint Rescue Coordination Centers in Canada and Portugal were alerted. Aircraft were dispatched. Ships were radioed. A full transatlantic search operation began. They traced the estimated path Theos would have sailed, roughly 1,800 nautical miles across open ocean. Planes flew along that invisible corridor looking for any sign. A mast, a flare, a sail. They broadcast over marine radio, urging any vessel in the region to keep watch. But there was nothing. No distress signals, no wreckage, no oil slick, no flotsam. Just nothing. Theos had vanished. To this day, there's no evidence that anyone passed them. No reports of a collision, no radar signatures, no unusual marine traffic. Just a sailboat that sailed out of Halifax and never arrived. And the silence. That's what makes it so eerie. They were experienced, smart. They had multiple forms of communication, and yet not a single distress call was ever received. The ocean kept its secret well. 10 days after Brett and Sarah were supposed to arrive in the Azores, on July 10th, something washed ashore on a lonely, windswept piece of land known as Sable Island National Park Reserve. It's a strip of sand and scrub about 100 miles off the coast of Nova Scotia. Famous for its wild horses and haunting beauty, it's not a place many boats pass by, let alone make landfall on. That afternoon, Parks Canada staff came across a 10-foot inflatable boat washed up on the beach. At first glance, it looked like any other piece of debris, but then they got closer. Inside were the remains of 2 people. The authorities were called immediately. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Joint Rescue Coordination Center responded, and it didn't take long to connect the dots. A 70-year-old man and a 60-year-old woman, matching the ages of Brett and Sarah, were found inside the inflatable, along with some supplies and gear that suggested they had been attempting to survive. But here's the thing. No one could say for certain whether the inflatable was their dedicated life raft or their dinghy. Theos carried both. A 10-foot inflatable dinghy stored on deck under a cover and an offshore life raft secured with a hydrostatic release. The records don't clarify which one they were found in. Either way, they'd made it off the boat alive. That single detail shifts the entire narrative. Whatever happened to Theos, whether it was a collision, a fire, a sudden hull failure, it didn't kill them immediately. They had time to abandon ship, time to gather what they could and climb into the small boat. Time to hope that help would come, but help didn't come, and by the time they drifted to that desolate island, it was too late. The news broke quietly at first. On July 13th, Brett's son, James, made a heartbreaking post on Facebook confirming their deaths. He wrote with the raw pain of someone who had just lost 2 people he loved, and without closure. "The past few days have been very hard," he wrote. "My father, James Brett Clibbery, and his wife, Sarah Justine Packwood, have regrettably passed away. There is still an investigation as well as DNA tests to confirm, but with all the news, it's hard to remain hopeful." He went on to describe their love, their wisdom, and how Sarah had become a beacon of kindness and curiosity for everyone who followed their story. It was a tribute full of heartbreak and of pride. They had lived a rare kind of life, brave, free, purposeful. But even in that moment of mourning, questions still hung heavy in the air. What exactly happened out there? Why did the tracker go silent? Why wasn't an EPIRB activated? If there was one on board at all, how long had they drifted? Did they ration food and water, hoping each day would bring a rescue? And maybe the hardest question of all, why did no one start looking sooner? There's a cruel weight to that timeline. They were declared missing on July 2nd, found dead on July 10th. That's 8 days. And it's entirely possible they were still alive when the search finally began. 8 days adrift on the open ocean. 8 days of sun, salt, thirst, and helplessness. 8 days of hope turning slowly into silence. And still, Theos remains missing. No sign of her has ever been found. No debris field, no sail on the horizon, no overturned hull. It's like she vanished into the deep and took the full story with her. We're left with the raft, the remains, and a hole in the hearts of those who knew and followed them. Even with everything we do know, the timeline, the tracker failure, the discovery of their bodies, we're still left staring into a fog of uncertainty. There are so many unanswered questions surrounding the fate of Brett, Sarah, and Theos that it's hard to know where speculation ends and truth begins. The first and most pressing question: what happened to Theos? Why did they abandon ship in the middle of the Atlantic? A modern, ocean-capable sailboat like their Gypsy 42 Ketch doesn't just vanish without a reason. Was there a catastrophic failure, something sudden like a hull breach from a collision or a rogue container? Did a chain plate or through-hull fitting fail, causing uncontrollable flooding? Or was it something slower but equally dangerous? A fire, perhaps, sparked by the lithium battery system powering their electric motor. That battery setup was brilliant in theory, but untested in ocean conditions for a voyage like this. A thermal runaway in a lithium battery can lead to fire or explosion with almost no warning. And on a boat, that kind of fire spreads fast and gives you very few options. Another possibility: capsize. Theos had been modified extensively. Extra battery weight, solar panels, changes to the rig. These all affect a boat's stability. While her design originally passed the capsize screening formula, no one really knows how the added weight impacted that. Did a sudden knockdown or rogue wave send her over? And if so, did they get thrown clear, or did they make the choice to abandon a partially disabled vessel? Then there's the question of safety gear. Their spot tracker went dark just 2 days into the voyage. That could be equipment failure, or it could mean the unit was submerged or destroyed. But what about an EPIRB? There's no official confirmation they carried one, and it was never activated. If they had one, why wasn't it used? If they didn't, why not? An EPIRB could have brought rescue within hours. That's the hardest part to wrestle with. Brett and Sarah may have survived whatever happened to Theos, only to be lost during the long wait that followed. The discovery of their remains in the raft or dinghy proves they made it off the boat. They had a chance. They prepared, and yet they were left adrift for nearly a month without rescue. And what about Theos herself? She's never been found. No sighting, no wreckage, not even a drifting hull. It's possible she went straight to the bottom. But sometimes, boats like this drift for months or years before turning up on a faraway shore. If she ever does reappear, she might hold the final clues. Until then, we're left with theories, grief, and that gnawing sense that this didn't have to happen, that something, some link in the chain, failed, and because of it, 2 bright, brave souls were lost. Brett and Sarah weren't reckless. They were careful, creative, and deeply committed. They had a vision of a better way to travel, to live, to love, and they paid the highest price chasing that vision. Their story is a cautionary tale, yes, but it's also a reminder of how fragile we are on the sea, of how prepared we need to be, and of how every moment out there, even the quiet ones, are borrowed gifts. If you take anything from this, let it be this: carry the right safety gear. Check your emergency systems, and never, ever underestimate the ocean. I'll leave you with the memory of Brett and Sarah, 2 beautiful souls who lived life on their own terms. May they rest easy wherever they now drift. Until next time, friends, keep the heavy side down and take care of each other out there.